dying and like sweating and like running around like crazy, but like, and happy, right? Like a smile on my face. And now I've definitely had messages left on red. Looking ahead at my future and then sort of taking stock of my past and realizing that if I ever am going to silence this tiny voice in the back of my head, and me personally, I think that if you have a client, well, I'm going to get canceled. If you're doing a color and that person's come in,
You're awesome. Welcome to the Apex Studios podcast. Today with us, we have the pleasure of having Arbana Dollani. She's been a professional hairstylist for over 8 years now, and she's worked on countless magazines, commercials, movies with countless celebrities, and more. Welcome.
thank you, and thanks for having me.
It is our pleasure.
That was a nice introduction.
Thank you. It only took me 10 times.
I'm honored.
Let us know, what are some fun, exciting things you've recently done and been part of?
I think the most exciting thing recently, and I think it ties into sort of today, is working on the latest season of Top Chef. It's currently airing. We shot last year in July. So it's been really fun to kind of be behind the scenes and see how it's done. I was a huge fan of the show, I think particularly in the first few years when it started. And so it was really fun to kind of see how the show happens. And then to now be on the viewer side and sort of know how the sauce is made, I guess, pun intended. So that's been really fun, yeah.
How did you get to work on the Top Chef?
I was actually brought on by a friend, colleague that she's the department head for hair and makeup. And so she's been trying to bring me on for a couple of seasons now, and it just didn't work out. And so it finally sort of, everything fell in place, and I was able to join her for last season. And yeah, contacts, that's what this industry is about, meeting people.
Besides just knowing the right person, why do you think people call you back specifically?
Great question. I think what I've sort of concluded or taken away from the 8 years that I've been in this industry is, first of all, there's a ton of people out there that do hair, and you can find a lot of sort of hair and makeup artists, but I think at the end of the day, aside from your talent, people hire you for your personality. And I think sometimes personality trumps talent, because when you're spending 10 to 12 hours a day on set, it's important that you're spending it with people that you can collaborate with, that there's a mutual respect, that there's, I think a vibe is the cool word. I think for the most part, it's who you are. And so sometimes I think people are willing to hire someone who's maybe not the top talent just because they're really wonderful to have on set and do beautiful work. Yeah. So I think maybe I fall in that category.
I would definitely say so. Having known you 8 years, we actually started kind of at the beginning of your career. If you want to maybe take us back to that moment. What did you used to do in a previous life, and how did you decide to do what you've been doing for 8 years now?
Yeah, so it's a long story, but I used to manage, I was the general manager of the King Tut exhibition that toured US and Europe, and I did that for about 7 years. With the same company, I moved to the production side, so I then went from sort of managing the daily operations to managing a crew that built and tore down the exhibition, and we went sort of from museum to museum. And I think I was in that career for about 7-8 years, and got to see the world, got to go to Egypt and go into tombs that the general public isn't allowed to because we were hosted by the Egyptian government. And so it was a very, incredible experience. Sometimes I can't believe that was my life and that happened to me. So
very culturally enriching.
Oh, incredibly. And just also in your 20s and early 30s, getting to live in different places in US and Europe. And I would find myself, I think one of my favorite places was in Vienna, when I would find myself getting off the subway and walking to this beautiful building that was my office, and sort of wondering like, how did I end up here? How am I here? And I don't have a background in Egyptology or anything like that. So yeah, I did that for a few years, and then I've always had a love for doing hair since I was a little kid, and I would always, whenever I got my hair done, I'd be at the salon and I would just look at the stylist and be like, oh, you're so lucky you get to do this. And so in the back of my mind, I would have this idea that like, when I get fired from this job, then I'm going to go to beauty school. And I wasn't getting fired. I kept getting like promoted. And so finally I sort of at 34 had this sort of moment of looking ahead at my future and then sort of taking stock of my past and realizing that if I ever am going to silence this tiny voice in the back of my head and try doing hair, that window of possibility was closing in, because I knew I'd have to go to school and start from the bottom. And so I felt like it's now or never. And so I quit my job, which was not an easy decision. It took me about a year to like think about it and stress about it, and then I quit my job, moved to New York, went to school, and was sort of hoping in the back of my mind that like, okay, I'm going to take a year off. I'm going to do this just to like shut myself up. And if I don't like it, then I'm going to come back to my career invigorized and like energized and excited about it. And I ended up really loving it. And so I've obviously never looked back since, and happy to be doing what I'm doing. And also finding myself in moments of like, I cannot believe this is my life. Like, I can't believe I'm doing this, So.
What were some misconceptions that very quickly got corrected once you were either in school or done with school and out in the real world of hairstyling?
I think generally there's this misconception that people that do hair and makeup or are in this sort of non-traditional job that's not in an office and you didn't get like a college degree. And I think there's a misconception that you are incapable of doing something else. And I guess you're just going to do hair. And I think to some point, I may have also held like a slight opinion of that. I know it's not true, but I know that when I first started, it was difficult for me because I think I also came from such a really rich career and a successful career that now that I was doing hair, I wanted people to know that there was more depth to me. And I had to fight that myself and realize that I was also holding those prejudices about this career, and now being and kind of really having now spent 8 years in it and realizing that it's so wrong, because to be, especially for me, a freelance hairstylist, you have to be your own manager, your own agent, you have to be an accountant, you have to know labor laws, you're like a business owner. And so you have to have an artistic eye, and you have to actually have talent, professionalism, presence on set. Like, you just have to do so many things that a traditional job, a 9 to 5 in an office, is way easier than in some aspects being in this world. So yeah, it's not easy. I mean, it's great, but I think now I have so much more respect for people in this industry that I don't think I could have had if I did not walk in these shoes myself, So
what's the one thing that feels most rewarding to you?
I don't always love my work. I am super critical of it. Like,
unpopular opinion. I think most people are like that. I mean,
I just think our industry is, I think maybe, most people, but it's very rare when I really have done hair and have walked away or like have gone home and been like, I feel really great about it. And so when I have those days, I feel like I can do anything, and so.
Is there any specific accomplishments you feel happy about?
I mean, I think, success is very gradual in this industry. And I think that there's a perception that you can get to the top really quickly. And maybe perhaps some people have, but I think generally it takes a really long time. And so you kind of celebrate every every sort of notch up from where you were before. I think for me, I'm super proud of some of the clients that I get to work with that kind of hire me back consistently. And I've shot some, global campaigns. I think the celebrities that I've worked with, I feel super fortunate about, but I also have received those opportunities because other people recommended me for them and sort of, pulled me up. So it feels like this is an interesting one. I think overall I'm really grateful for every opportunity I get, but I don't really, I am proud, but I don't stay there because I could not be in the position I'm in now if it wasn't for all the people that have helped me. So I feel like I'm just proud of the circle of people that support me and have encouraged me and send me work or hire me. I think maybe that's my most proud, other than I've done this and I've worked with this person, because that's just the result of having the people that have supported me, if that makes sense.
So you're proud to have done well by those who have given you an opportunity.
Yeah, I'm proud of the circle of people that have supported me. I think that's most important.
What's some advice you would have for hairstylists on set to make sure that when they get that opportunity, they get that call back? How do you make sure people remember you and they think of you next time they need a hairstylist? In our industry, that's a constant struggle because you're constantly comparing yourself with other people. Why is this person getting these jobs and why am I not getting this work? And I think I've just come to realize that I can only, I have to be myself, and I have to truly be my authentic self on set, because that's what's going to get me either hired or not on the next job. And obviously do good work and try to achieve what the client is looking for. So I think my biggest recommendation is, I think one, professionalism, hands down. That can be clouded when you're on set and there's loud music and it's exciting and everyone's happy. The clients have been preparing for this shoot for months, and so they're really excited to finally be on set, shooting this campaign that they've been planning for a long time. And the models, sometimes it's really exciting and fun, and it can be easy to forget that we are all at work, and so you have to be professional. And so I think that sort of reading the room and being professional should be just a base starting point. But most of all, I think, is just be yourself, because at the end of the day, that's gonna either keep you with a client, and if not, then that's okay. Those are not your people. You're gonna start to kind of move around and try different, or work with different people. And so I think if you're yourself, you're going to find your people much quicker, and obviously then book more work that way. Would you say in the beginning, maybe you can't do that because you're just trying to get every job you can? So
absolutely.
How do you mold and kind of fit to the production?
I just, you won't work because you work freelance, and so you want people to hire you back, and sometimes you can be desperate, please like me, But I think I also entered this career at the older age where I'd sort of started to understand a little bit more about who I was. But in terms of delivering something the client wants, I think I'm still training my eye. I've also had the opportunity to work with some really big hairstylists as an assistant, and I've learned so much. And one of my mentors gave me this piece of advice that, never get too comfortable in the position you're in. The moment you think I'm doing great hair is the moment when you're gonna lose that job. So it be a little bit uncomfortable. And so I think when I'm on set and I've done something and the client is oh, it's not really quite there, this is what I'm looking for, I'm also learning. Every time I do a job, I'm constantly learning. So sometimes I have to let go of what I think is good in order to do what the client is asking. And so I have to take a sort of a leap of faith there. And sometimes it does look really great, and I've learned something more. And sometimes if I don't like it, but it's what the client wants, and I don't think it looks really good, at the end of the day, I'm there to deliver something that they want. So then I do what I'm told, and if I don't like the images, they don't go in my book.
Yeah.
But I think that those moments are really quite rare. Most of the time, people hire you because they want you to do the work. And if you have a better idea and if you don't think that's going to work, that's why they've hired you. So, yeah, you just have to kind of be pliable.
Gotcha.
And work with a client.
Got it.
Or the model, whoever has that opinion.
So you do still have to be yourself, but you have to be pliable too and mold to the set and the request of it. Yeah,
I mean, it's a negotiation in some point constantly, right? You're just trying to but I think, in my experiences, there are people that are quite prepared for the shoot. And so they've already decided here's the model, here's some looks we'd like for them. And so you have an idea. And then sometimes if it's not going to work, I've gone to the client and suggested a different style. And again, they trust you, but
yeah,
it's like a collaboration. It always is. And when you're collaborating, you have to give and take.
Back before you made the jump to decide and do hairstyling, you said as a little girl, you always like working with hair.
Yes.
How early does that stem? And did you ever voice that opinion to others? Was it just like a secret thing?
So let's go way back. I was born in Albania and grew up there, and my family immigrated to the United States in 94. So I'm 43 years old, so this was in the 80s. And at that time, Albania was a communist country, and quite conservative. And so makeup was reserved only for married women. And so once you got married, you were able to put on like a red lipstick and
before
do
that
your
you
hair.
couldn't do anything?
No. And if you did, it was incredibly shameful. But you didn't see that so much because Albania was a really small country. And so your society's opinion of you was the wealth that you carried, because everybody else was poor and you were, everyone was the same. So, what your neighbors thought of you, what your community thought of you was really important. So no one really kind of veered from that. And you definitely didn't want to bring shame to your family. That was a big thing. So my mother was an accountant, but she has always had a love for hair and makeup. And I think that in some ways I am living out her dream as well. We only had a day off a week. We went to school and worked Monday through Saturday, and we only had Sundays off. And so on Sundays, sometimes she would be hired by brides. So she would take me along with her, and, we would go into the home of the parents where the bride was getting ready, and they would lock us in this room, and the family didn't see the bride until she was ready. And so my mom would be, plucking eyebrows for the first time and and now there was no beauty supply store. And so I had conversations with her now, what did you where did you find foundation and lipstick? And she whatever she'd gathered, pretty much used the same thing on everybody.
Yeah.
But anyway.
What kind of sponge? Was it just the same sponge?
These were the sponges. And so she would transform these young women who I think were predominantly 18, 19, 20. That was the age. And so she would do their hair and she would do their makeup and she would help them get into their dress. And then she would, go to the door and she would call on the family. And so then the family would gather outside the door. And so she would then open the door and out, would come this bride. And I was always behind the bride, seeing the reaction of her family and just being so excited by that. And, I didn't know it at the time, but it's I have so many of those sort of core memories that have left an impact in me. And I think even at that age, I was like, this is really cool. Like, I want to do this. So, and I had an aunt who also did hair. And so she lived in a different town than us. And so I would go visit she was married to my uncle. So I'd go visit my uncle and my cousins, and she would obviously take us with her. She'd be at the salon and we'd just be outside playing, because that's what people and kids did in Albania at the time. And I would be inside, like, begging her, like, let me take out the rollers for the old ladies, and like, let me sweep. And she would turn around and like, just go outside, play with your cousins. Like, what are you doing? And so I just always really like loved it, but I didn't know that was a career. So then we came to the United States, and I had an opportunity in high school to go to like a vocational high school. And so I came home and I told my dad, hey, there's this opportunity. I can go to this vocational high school. I can get a cosmetology license and a diploma. And he was like, absolutely not. You're going to go to college, and you're going to, he's like, my duty as your parent is to make sure that you have an education. What you do after that is up to you. So then I did the right thing, and I finished high school and went to college and got like a proper job and, did that. But I always really loved hair. And so.
What was the proper job? Is that what led you to do the?
Yeah. Well, right after college, I got a job working for Celine Dion in Las Vegas. She was doing her residency there, A New Day. And so I speak like some French, some Italian. And so I was hired to work for her in her production company. And I worked really closely with her husband and her, and his son. And they were sort of my direct bosses. And so I did that for 3 years. And the company that sponsored the show, AEG Live, they were sponsoring this exhibition. And so I sort of started to work on like helping, like Ticketmaster was what we used. And so they needed, the King Tut exhibit was selling like pre-sale tickets. And so they needed people to kind of help build it. And, it's been so long now. So I got involved in the early stages of it simply because they needed people. And I knew Ticketmaster. And so that's how I kind of learned about it, but never was not like an interest for me. But my boss at the time, I was in LA, and he called and he's like, hey, they're having this job interview or job fair, and you should go to meet Deborah, this woman that I'd been sort of helping with Ticketmaster. And so I just was at the beach with my best friend. And so she had like a cardigan in the back of her car and like some flat shoes. And so we left the beach and go to this job fair. And I went simply to meet Deborah, but then suddenly I found myself in an interview, and they were hiring for managers. And so then all of a sudden I sort of got passed around to 3 different people. And by the end of it, they offered me the job, and they were like, oh, you have 2 weeks to move here. So that's kind of how I left Celine and then started the King Tut job. It was like it happened very suddenly, but it was because my boss sort of pushed me to it. So, yeah.
When you were having that conversation with your dad about education, how hard did you push back?
I think I had no idea. I didn't really know. I thought of like a salon job only. I thought doing hair was like you got to work in a salon and then you opened a salon, and that was sort of the success of it. I had no idea that this world existed, that you could be a session stylist and you could work in magazine shoots and film. Like, I couldn't comprehend because I just didn't know. I thought, you work in a salon. And I didn't really know this until I went to beauty school in New York and I got out of it. But I think we were so new to this country, and I'd seen this incredible sacrifice that my parents made to bring my brother and I here. I mean, they gave up everything their entire life. So I think I had this sense of duty and responsibility to honor that sacrifice and to, get an education and do whatever it was to make them happy and make them proud and honor their sacrifice. So I didn't really push back much. Like when he said, no. And also at 14, I don't think you can really push back, you know? So I was like, okay, I guess not.
When you were doing that King Tut job, though, what was the final stick that broke? Was it like a day at work or?
Yeah, there's definitely a story there. But the company that I worked for initially got bought out. And so suddenly I was being managed by, at some extent, the people I worked for before, which I like deeply loved and respected, but it was a new team. And I think with any company that gets bought and managed, like hands turn over, there is some change to the culture, there's some change to the way things are done. And so I think I was at a place where I didn't feel like I was valued in the way that I had been before. And I think particularly in the line of work that I was in, there was not that many people doing what I was doing. And so I just wasn't, I wasn't valued. And I didn't think that I was getting the respect that I deserved. And so,
which is a blessing in disguise.
Yeah, I didn't know it at the time, but I think if that had not happened, if I had not been sort of mistreated, if you will, I don't think I would have left, because I decided to leave because it felt like I wasn't leaving something great. And so it made leaving a lot easier. And it wasn't until later that I realized that it was a blessing in disguise, because if that hadn't happened, I'm not sure that I would be here today. Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
As you kind of look towards the future of your career, do you have any specific goals in mind?
I think there's career goals, but I think, there are goals, but in this career, to achieve the goals, you have to also give up a lot. Like when you see this really, really big celebrity stylist that I've had the honor to work with and assist and learn from, they also give up a lot. They're constantly working, they're constantly traveling, and yes, they've got the success of working with the top Hollywood actresses. Like, it's not all bad. Like, they get to sort of have a little bit of, a lavish lifestyle and travel and this hotel and this, this celebrity and like all of that stuff. But I think at the end of the day, they also give up a lot, and they're tired because you have to constantly work. And so I've had a lot of moments of like, what is it that I really want? Like, do I want that? And of course I want that. Of course I want to work with the top celebrities, but I've seen what it takes. And I think for me, my sort of goal and my what I've always come back to is, like, I want a balance of personal life and work life. I want to be able to travel with my husband and do all these fun things. And I also want to work. And so you can't take a month off. I mean, I just came back from Albania and I was there for 3 weeks. Like, you can't really go away all the time and travel and then also maintain this high caliber clientele, because they want you all the time and they have their own schedule. And so your life then becomes whatever their schedule is, that's what you're doing. So I don't know if I'll ever sort of be at that caliber, because I'm just not willing to give up my personal freedom, So
That's fascinating.
Yeah. So for me, like, a balance of personal and professional has always been what I want.
Would you say there's some advice you would give yourself at the beginning of this journey that you wish you'd heard before you started?
That's a great question. I don't know. Let's see.
Along the lines of, what are things you should expect when going into the entertainment industry and working in hair? You mentioned one, which is sacrifice.
Yeah. I think there's like so much advice to give. I think if I were to give my old self advice, it would probably be to just understand that it takes time, because I think for a while I was really impatient, like, why, what's going on, and it took me a long time to even like get in with the agencies to start assisting, because I didn't know anybody, and sometimes agents are not willing to put an unknown artist in their assistant roster, because you're going in, when you start assisting, you're going into celebrities' homes and you're assisting, huge stylists, and they don't really know who they're bringing to set with them, so it can be kind of risky. And so they're very protective of like who kind of goes into that circle, as they should be. So it took me a really long time to even like get in to an agency, but I was like super persistent. So I think that what I would recommend to someone is like, you have to be persistent. You have to constantly reach out to people and constantly put yourself on their radar, because people will remember the last person they work with. Even if you're great, like they're busy doing other things. So you have to constantly keep in contact. And I think I would advise people to build their network more than anything. Like, focus on the people that you're working with. So if you're on set as an assistant, like, make friends with a makeup artist that's an assistant. Make friends with the PA that's on set, because today they're the PA, but tomorrow they're a producer that's hiring for a job, So I think like start building those networks and those friendships. And I think just be genuine and like be yourself, because again, you just have to find your people. And once you find your people, then you start helping each other out, just because this business has to work that way and works that way. No one's like made it out. No one's made it on their own in anything really, but particular in this business.
Would you say there's anything you can alleviate like those agencies' concerns, like work for free with someone and get good photos of like hairstyles so that you could show them, or you try to find what they're looking for?
Yeah, I mean, when I started, there was like, I started working on like Model Mayhem, which was like the Craigslist of, hairstylists, makeup artists, photographers, like everyone's trying to like build their book. I don't really know is Model Mayhem around? Do you know?
I don't know if I genuinely haven't gone since.
Really, Model Mayhem's the reason we met. We're sitting here today.
Yeah.
So,
8 years ago.
Yeah. So, ask me that question again, because I forgot.
So my question was with regards to how to alleviate talent agencies, like, because their concern is, can you work well enough?
I think you have to, when you're sending an email, I think you have to be very professional. Like, people figure out really quickly just by a few words sort of who you are. But I think also in today's world, like when I started, social media Instagram wasn't as big. And so, if you're going to reach out to agents, you have to think about what your Instagram account looks like. That's the first place people go to see, like, who are you? What kind of work do you do? And I just think you have to keep reaching out. And, you do work for free in this industry. It's part of, which I don't really like. But if you really want to get in with someone and you really want to assist an artist, I think you should absolutely offer to assist them and just say, like, even if there's no rate, like, I would love the opportunity, because maybe they can bring you in on a test shoot that they're doing on some sort of low stakes job, that they can bring you in, where if you're some crazy assistant, and I've had some crazy assistants, like if you're just kind of a loose cannon, they're maybe working with their friends on a shoot, and so they can kind of feel you out. They're not going to bring you to a celebrity's home if they don't know you. It's very rare. It does happen, but it's very rare. Usually the agents have kind of gotten to know you. So I would say, like, offer to work for free. And if they like you, you've just opened like a whole new path to work for yourself and contacts. Because I think when you start working with, I think assisting is like hands down, like you have to assist. It's truly the only way to get into this industry, and you should assist because you learn so much, but you also are constantly meeting new people that are in the circles that you want to be in, and once you start getting familiar, maybe, in time, if the artist you're assisting isn't available, maybe they'll bring you in. Maybe not for a big celebrity, but like someone else. I mean, even for a big celebrity, it's happened to me, you know? So it's sort of how you build your clientele that way. So I would say assist, for sure.
How do you pick the right person to assist for?
I mean, I've assisted a lot of people, like, you know, people from Europe, New York, LA, London, and I've assisted some people that were really unkind and not easy to work with on set. And I started a little bit older, so I wasn't the kind of assistant on set that's like interested in doing BTS. I mean, you can't get me to do BTS now, and I should be doing it. So I was like very professional, and I've always had really great set etiquette just because I came from a professional setting where I was in boardrooms with people. So I treated it very much like that, which I'm sure sometimes I probably stuck out because it's, you know, everyone's like so cool and relaxed, and I was like highly, like very professional. But anyway, so I have worked with some people that were like just awful to work with. And, you know, assistants talk. And so I've met other people that have also worked with the same people, and they're like, that person is horrible. And for me, my power was not accepting work with those people again. And so when they would come back, and this particular artist came back for me for an entire year, their agent would ask for me. And I was like, why would I want to work? You know, why would I want to work with you? Like, you're awful. You're like impossible to assist. And you're just like, I'm stressed for 12 hours on set for no reason. So I think for me, like, I just don't work with those people, you know? And then in terms of like assistants, like I've only had one experience where the assistant I had was like recommended to me. And it was a pretty big campaign for me. And so I was like, wanting to make sure I was doing a good job, because it was like is pretty early, like not early on, but it was the first really big campaign that I'd gotten. And so I just, you know, I learned I probably didn't manage the situation well in terms of like pulling my assistant to the side and being like, I think setting the tone, like, hey, here's how I like to work, and here are my expectations of you. I sort of just assumed that they would be like I was. And so I think never working with that person again, like that person has never assisted me and will never assist me again, just because we didn't really click, but also they just weren't the kind of person I want on set. If I'm sending you on set because I'm working with a model in the trailer and the photographer's on set, like, you need to be on set. Why are you taking videos of the house we're in when the photographer is shooting? Like, you are me on set. And so it wasn't a new assistant. It was like a pretty seasoned assistant. So anyway.
Well, that's fascinating because those are sometimes the interesting, valuable tips.
Yeah.
People don't necessarily always know, hey, if you're doing an e-commerce shoot, you should be there on the site looking at the hair and the clothes. So sometimes, you hire someone and you think they'll know that. So did you basically learn in that instance, do you kind of set the tone at the beginning and you make sure you tell them what you want? You don't just assume that they would know?
I work with my friends now. Like, I bring in a lot of people that I know. I mean, I've hired new people, but I usually, now it's if there's something, like if they're on their phone a lot, that's a big problem for me. And so I'll say like, hey, you know, can you please put your phone away? Which is so absurd to me that you have to say. But to be fair, I was also told that. I remember being on a job once and kind of like nothing was happening. And I was on my phone and I was assisting this new artist, and he saw me and he just started walking towards me, and I was like, and he's like, can you not be on your phone? And I was so embarrassed and like just so ashamed, because it's not who I was, but I definitely was on my phone. And that was like, I'll never do that again, you know? And so now I expect that from my assistants. Like, I don't mind people being on their phone, because sometimes you're on set and you're getting a job request for another day, and like, it's just what we do. Like, we are on our phones, but if you're scrolling Instagram or Twitter or whatever and there's a model on set, like, your eyes should be on that person. So now, you know, if I'm working with new people, I'll kind of see who they are, but now I like am very particular about who I take recommendations from, and I ask a lot of questions about like, what is that person like on set? Like, how are they, you know, how do they assist? But I'm also really easy to work with, to be fair. I think I'm making myself sound like really strict. Like, I'm really easy to work with.
No, I can vouch for that. But that's the thing too, is maybe you can talk to just how important your mannerism is, again, because it really is oftentimes as important as your...
I mean, I think you have to read the room. That's like the most important thing you can do is, I don't know if I think it can be taught, but I think you have to read the room. When you walk in, you have to kind of scan everybody and see what's going on. And I think pay attention to the nonverbal, because those are some pretty important cues. People can let you know what's going on without saying a single word. And I think you have to adapt to whatever the environment is. I think particularly when you're working with celebrities, and if you're assisting, I mean, I'm of the belief of like, you know, speak when spoken to when you're assisting, because you truly are there to like be an extension of the stylist. And so if there's conversations that are being had, however insignificant and light, you should not be a part of them. That's how I operate, and I feel like it's pretty good advice. Like, the artist is the contact, is the star, I'm talking about like the hairstylist you're assisting. So whatever conversations they're having, you do not need to sort of jump in. And some people are super relaxed and they'll bring you in the conversation, but I would say let the person you're assisting dictate how those interactions go. And also, whatever conversations happen in a trailer, in a home with a celebrity or any client, like, it does not leave that space.
It stays there.
It absolutely stays there, because you'll find yourself out of work really quickly, because you know the people you're assisting need to be able to trust you, because they're going into someone's personal home. And when people are at home, you hear a lot of personal information that you think, man, if the tabloids got a hold of this, it would be a crazy story. But
not worth it.
Absolutely not.
Yeah,
I've
it's
heard
almost
some
like
things.
patient confidentiality.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And some people will make you sign NDAs, but for the most part, I've been in rooms where I've heard some things that like I've not uttered to a soul. I haven't even gone home and told my husband, who like, you know,
wouldn't even
would
care.
never.
Yeah.
I'm sure he doesn't even want to know, but like, you just don't want anything coming out, because that's pretty bad. And you have to be respectful. Like, you know, if people came into my home and heard personal conversations, I wouldn't want them going out and talking about it. So, yeah.
And oftentimes they also just like to talk to you, because that's the thing, is you put the talent in the right or the wrong mood. So,
oh my gosh. Yeah. For sure. And you have to know, you know, sometimes like when I've worked with celebrities or people, like sometimes the makeup artist is the star in the room. And I mean that in like the conversations they're having, like sometimes there's a closer friendship. And also when you're a makeup artist, you're truly in front of someone's face, you know? And then some people like to work quietly. And then some people they want to be the star in the room. And so you just have to like, you're along for the ride.
Adapt.
You know?
Yeah.
You have to adapt, and you have to like perform.
I was wondering if there's any way you can allude to pricing, or
when people are like, what's your rate? Like, my first thought is, well, how much are you willing to pay me? Like, that's my rate. But I think you start to kind of, the more you work, the more you kind of know what the average rate is. Like, for the most part, there is a rate that, you know, like regular clients will hire you. So you start to kind of understand like, oh, okay, if I'm doing this, it's this or that. And then you have to set a standard for yourself. Like sometimes the rate is $300 and then sometimes the rate is $2,500, you know? So you have to determine like, I mean, obviously the top, you can kind of keep going, but you know, I do turn down work. If the rate's really low, I'm not going to do it, because sometimes with some people, they'll bring you in at that lower rate and your rate will never go up. I think like an average starting rate is $1,000. I think like $800 to $1,000 is like I would say
And would that usually
average.
include an assistant with you or just for yourself?
No. So the assistants.
When do you know you need an assistant? You can't just do it all yourself?
No. I mean, if you have multiple talent, if there's multiple sets, like if there's like a video and a photo that are working simultaneously, like you can't possibly be in two locations at the same time. And so it all depends. Like one talent, you can do it yourself, unless you're doing some sort of a style that's so laborious that you need an extra set of hands to like hold and pin and things like that. But, you know, I think producers kind of and clients know that if you're hiring, you know, if they're bringing like 7 models, like of course you're going to need assistants and you're probably going to need 2 or 3, you know, and you can kind of gauge. And I work with my clients, like if I really don't think I can do it. And I mean, in the beginning, I used to do like 8 people by myself, you know, just dying and like sweating and like running around like crazy, but like, and happy, right? Like a smile on my face. And now that's not going to happen, because I'm not going to kill myself for your budget. And we're talking like $350. I think my beef with rates is that they just haven't gone up. They've continued to go down. Like when I started as an assistant 8 years ago, the assistant rate was $350. It is still that rate today. Sometimes it's $400, sometimes like it can go up depending on the budget, but
it hasn't adjusted for inflation.
In 8
like anything
years,
else, yeah.
The rate hasn't gone up. That's not right, you know? And even my rates, like I've worked with clients for years and that's just my rate hasn't changed. Now, you can argue that if you have representation, like if you have an agent, your agent can try to get you a higher rate. And for the most part, they do, but sometimes they don't. And then they're taking 20% from you and 20% from clients. So they're taking 40% of your rate. And I know some friends of mine that have agents that have brought clients to them and are taking a lower rate because the agent is taking 20% from it. Like the agent's not able to get a higher rate because the client is like, nope, sorry, that's just the top of what we can do. So, you know, I think for me, I think 1,000 is kind of average.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course there's less and there's more, but it depends on what the job requires.
How do you know when you should go to an agent? Is there just certain jobs you can't acquire that you should be with an agent, or will you just get more opposed to being a freelancer?
You know, I mean, when Target or Walmart or, you know, a big company shoots their campaigns, they're going to an agency. They're going to like a creative agency who then goes to an agency. And there's some benefit to having to go to an agent, because if for some reason there's an issue and the artist isn't available, or, you know, I don't know, has some emergency in the family, the agents have like a roster of people they can send you versus like coming to me, who I don't have an agent. But I very much, if I've never pulled out of a job, but if I would, I always cover myself. I mean, I get asked to do a job and I'm not available, and I help the clients find people. Like, hey, I'm not available, but can I help you find someone?
Mm-hmm.
And then and even like when I was assistant, I was doing the same thing, like finding assistants. And I think that has also helped me build my roster of clients, because people know that I don't just care for that particular job. I actually care about the client and the production, even if I'm not part of it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think there are some benefits to having an agent. For me, it's not something I've been interested in having, because I want quality. Like, I want to work and I want to take time off when I want it, and I don't want anybody else to be
in charge of that.
Yeah. And, you know, and a lot of people are like, oh, well, your agent won't, of course your agent won't care. I mean, it's your career. And I think you also have to find the right, you know, the agent is your business partner. They're taking 40% of your rate. So you have to find the right person to work with. But I look at it as like, if I'm an agent and I'm sending you work and you're like, no, sorry, I'm going to go on vacation or I'm going to go travel, and you're not available all the time, you're also making it difficult for me to earn a living, because that's how they're making their money. So then they're going to the next person. And so you're kind of I don't know. For me, it's been like, I've been good without an agent. I've found my own clients. I still work with agencies. Like some agencies do send me out for work, but I've had a couple of meetings, but I've just been kind of a little shy about sort of taking that leap because I feel like I've been doing just fine on my own, and I'm constantly asking people, like producers, like, hey, I have this job with this client and, how much am I charging? Or people I work with. And sometimes I find out that I'm not charging as much as I should be, and then sometimes like I'm right where I need to be, but I'm constantly having those conversations with people in the field. And like every time I can increase my rate, I try to increase it. So
along with increasing the rate, how are you always increasing your skills?
I take a lot of like education classes. So I have, like particularly with working with textured hair, I feel so fortunate that I went to school in New York because I got to learn. You practice on your classmates, and my like classmates were so diverse. I've never, like prior to cosmetology school, I never like touch textured hair. Why would I? I can style my own hair and I can style anybody else's hair that's exactly like mine, but I never worked with, different textures. And so I feel fortunate that I went to school in New York, that I got to like learn with my like classmates and from them. And then outside of that, I've taken a lot of classes, like texture classes, and again, every day I do a job on set, I am constantly learning. And like on the drive home, not even on the drive home, I'm, behind the photographer and watching the model, and I'm like, maybe I shouldn't have used that product. Maybe I should have done this, or I should have curled it that way, or like, oh, that kind of came out nice. And so I'm constantly critiquing my work. And then on the drive home, like, I think if I were to do this again, I would start it this way. I would prepare hair this way. And I think that constant reflection and practice is what teaches you. And then I still assist from time to time. Like there are just some solid artists that I will forever show up for and work with, because that's how I learn new techniques, and I get to pick their brains about the business. And so I don't assist new people, but I assist just like 3-4 people that when I can. And I don't assist a lot because I've just been so busy with my own work. But when I can, those are the people that I'm always like, yes, I will be there on your set, and like we'll do whatever you need me to do, because I learned so much.
What is something you would like to see change in the hair industry?
Well, rates. I think it would be really nice. Let's see. When you're working freelance, there is no corporate 401k or retirement account or anything like that. And like when I'm not working, I am not earning an income, right? There's like no salary that I'm sort of waiting. And so it creates a lot of insecurities for people. When COVID happened, I didn't work for, I would exaggerate. It's not an exaggeration if I said a year. And in that year, I barely had any work. And some of the people I know just weren't able to sustain it because it took a really long time for work to kind of start happening. And so some people left LA and went back to to their families because they just couldn't afford, even with unemployment, you couldn't afford to live here anymore. And so I wish that there was some way to help. There is a union, but it's only for film. And so it would be really great if there was some freelance union. And there's one in New York, but it would be great for that. But I think the only thing I wish was better is for, freelancers managing their retirement and prioritizing that, because it's really easy sometimes in this career. There's, it's feast or famine. You'll be so busy and you're making ridiculous money that you're like, this is it. This is going to be my life for forever. And then all of a sudden you're hit with a slow period, and other people aren't. Other people are working, but for some reason you're in a slow season and you're not working for a long time, or you're like, having very few jobs. And so it can be very scary. So I think figuring out a way to like save for retirement is something that I wish more.
How much business sense is needed? Like,
Oh,
was
right,
there
yes.
was there anything that
Yeah.
you weren't setting aside taxes and all
Yeah.
of a sudden at
Yeah.
the end of the year you're like, whoa.
Yeah. I think like in the beginning when I first started, I realized really early on, like, oh, I have to keep track of receipts, and I have to figure out like an invoice system because I'm sending these clients. And so I was keeping an Excel and very quickly realized like, this is not very efficient. And so then I signed up for QuickBooks, which was amazing. I highly recommend for anybody that's freelance. They have like a self-employed version. And so that's easy because you can, I was able to connect it to my credit card. So any purchase that I do, I could quickly allocate it to like a business expense. And then at the end of the year, you get like, this is how much I spend on gas. This is how much I spend on supplies, like whatever, you're purchasing. And then I was able to send invoices through that system. And then, track like, oh, hey, this client hasn't paid me in 60 days. And so it was easier to keep track of who hasn't paid me, what's been paid, so you still have to kind of self-manage it, but it's much easier. And then I like went to Staples and got like an old school, little filing envelope where I started putting my receipts. So like all my January receipts were in the same place and February receipts. And like, you have to start to do these things and then pay your taxes in a quarterly manner. And you kind of pick that up as you go. But I think,
you had some of it from your previous job, so it kind
of, but
and helped.
like a little bit, like at least I knew how to like, populate an Excel spreadsheet and do some, formulas there. But I realized like this doesn't work. I need a new system. And so then sort of was like, oh yeah, QuickBooks, I think that might work for me. Again, when you have an agent, you don't have to worry about things like that because they're the ones billing for you. And they're the ones kind of taking care of your paperwork. You still have to keep track of your expenses, but they're kind of managing your finances in a way. And so then I think if you're an agent, you get like a W-2. Or no, do you get a 1099? Anyway, that's irrelevant.
Gotcha.
But no, I think you get a 1099, but at least you get like one lump sum at the end of the year, where like when I do my taxes, I have like a stack of 1099s. And sometimes I have to reach out to clients and go, hey, are you going to send me a 1099? Because I need to be able to like properly document this as like a cash like entry or like as a 1099. And so sometimes like, you have to. So for me, the best way is like at the end of the month or like at the beginning of the next month, I kind of close, if you will, my books from the previous month. Like I go through my receipts and I go through, like I track my mileage and I track gas, like all these things. Yeah.
Is there anything that you initially spent money on that you would maybe suggest for people to not spend money on? And similar, is there anything you bought 8 years ago that you still have today and you love it? And it's like the best money you spent.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you go to beauty school, you get like a basic, like you get a blow dryer and some brushes and your kit. And then when I moved to LA and like started on my own, I started building up that kit. And I think in the beginning, you're like, well, I like this color comb and I like this brush and maybe this curling iron, and you quickly realize that you're becoming a little bit of a product hoarder or like, and so I still have things that I bought from a long time ago, like brushes and combs and things like that I don't necessarily use so much because there are certain brushes and there are certain things that I always go to that have become part of my kit. And I think products, like you're constantly buying products and then you're also working with brands that are sending you products eventually, or you're working with friends that are like, I have, 25 hairsprays, I can take it. So I think I've made it like my rule, like I will not buy a new product until I've used whatever it is I have in my house. And I have like a cabinet, like a dresser full of products that Like I open, but then like there's so many new products that are out there. It's like, oh, I want to try that. And technically it's a tax write-off because you're buying product for your kit, but then, you know, you're using it once or twice and it doesn't make it into your kit because maybe you don't like it, or you've got like 75 other products that do the same thing. So for me, it's like, no more. Like I have to use what I have. And then there's just like regular products that I go to that I know how I can use them and what texture hair and like what I get out of it, you know. But the buying of stuff is a little bit of a problem because there's just always new products, always new tools that you want to play with, and you just have to like refrain.
How do you go about using a product that's new to you? Do you like use it on yourself first?
Yeah, I'm pretty bad. I'm like so easy with my styling. Like I'm a wash and go kind of girl. I'm, you know, I feel it in my hands. Like it's actually really telling. Like you touch any product, like pomade or anything, and you kind of feel the tackiness in your hand, and it can kind of tell you a little bit about how it'll perform. But sometimes I just try it on set. Like, okay, I got this new volumizing spray. Like, let's try it, you know? And then you sort of figure out, like, you know, I don't think I'm going to do that again. Or, this is really great, and I can use this on, like, different methods, you know? And you just also have to be very good about reading the directions. Like, if it tells you on wet hair or... I mean, not always, because sometimes you have products that are like on wet hair only, but they'll work great on dry hair, you know? So you just have to play with it. But I mean, I think
a mixture, yeah.
Yeah, there's some products that I'm like, I'll never use this again. Or I'll use this if I'm creating a hairstyle that like is an updo and needs a really strong foundation, but maybe not, you know, on set when the hair needs to be pretty like free and flowy, you know?
And do you usually only try things that are maybe suggested to you or someone recommends?
Yeah, all the time. I mean, sometimes I'm on set with other stylists and they'll recommend a product that they've just used and they really love, and, you know, I'll try it. I mean, I do try products on myself. I just don't because I'm really so easy. But yeah, and sometimes brands will send me products, and that's really great because then I didn't have to pay for it.
Yeah.
And that's like a nice way to try some products, you know. But
at which point did you start having companies send you products?
I mean, I would say like the last couple of years. I think it takes a while. A lot of brands get to know you because you either like a lot of artists reach out to brands and are like, I'm so-and-so and this is my work and I'm doing this shoot. I'm working with a celebrity, like would love to use some of your products for this. So a lot of people get products sent to them because they've made the original ask, or they've made the connection, or they'll use a particular product so frequently and they'll tag the brand and the brand gets to know them. So there's just a lot of avenues for how that happens. I would say it's pretty rare if a brand finds you. You know, if you have an agent, your agent's doing all of that dealing and brands are just sending the agency products, or they're being very particular about like, I want this person to have all of these, you know, like hair tools and things like that. So there's contracts. That's when it can be really lucrative to have an agent because they can like, you know, make a deal with Dyson or whatever other like product or tool that's out there. And then you're making money with your client, but then you're also making money from your branding. So, yeah.
Have you ever reached out to anyone, or?
I have before. Have
you ever been shot down?
Oh, I mean, I've definitely had messages left on red. I remember I was in New York for Fashion Week and I had split my kit in two separate bags. So one, I had my backpack and I had like my scissors, my blow dryer, my brushes in one backpack. And then in a handheld bag, I had my hot tools and like all my products. And I had just done a day of like shows and I was on the subway heading to my hotel, and I didn't want to take my backpack off, and I sat in like the two-seaters, like, you know, and I didn't want to take my backpack off. So I sat kind of like, I sat with my back to, so like I set my bag on the chair and then I like sat kind of like this behind and was texting. I was texting an agent actually that I've had a great relationship and has sent me a lot of work, and just sort of was like telling her about what I was doing and things like that. And then all of a sudden I look up and it was like, my hotel was on 57th, and I look up and it was like, 57th, and I was like, oh my God, like this is my stop. And the train had been there for like a few seconds. So I just like jumped up and like went to walk. And as I walked out, I felt really light. And I was like, oh, I feel really light. And so I like panic. I realized like, oh my God, where's my bag? I panic and I turn around and the doors were like closing. And so I ran and I'm like a crazy person, like banging at the door. And people are like, who the hell is this crazy person? And I was like, my bag, my bag. And so then the train is like starting to pull off and I'm like running and I see the conductor and, he's like doing his thing, like signaling or whatever. And I was like, my bag. And he's like, I'll drop it off at the station. And like, I didn't get like which station. And so then and it's like 9 or 10 o'clock and I'm panicked. And so I jump on the next station thinking like, oh, he's dropped it off at like the next station. Like I went on this hunt at like 10 o'clock at night in New York to figure out where my bag was. And so I got off at the next station and the station attendant was like, go to Lost and Found, which of course now I'm like, what a horrible, like why would you send me at Lost and Found when Lost and Found closes at 5? So then I go, like, I just do this crazy. So then, but I had a show the next morning. So I had to like have a kit. So I'm just scrambling, reaching out to like all my friends, like, can I borrow like your curling irons? So then I, in a panic, reached out to a bunch of brands. Like I reached out to like GHD, which they have. And I was like, I didn't want to say like I'm an idiot and left my kit on the train, but I think I said like I lost my kit. I don't know if I said no. I didn't say my kit was stolen because then would be a lie.
That's
but
true.
I did lose it. My fault. And like they definitely didn't reach out, but I did get T3 to send me some tools that I still have today. So they were amazing. But the reason I got T3 was because someone I'd met on set that worked for a different brand had moved over to T3 and had just like randomly seen my message. But if it wasn't for her, I'm pretty sure T3 would not have sent me, tools. So it just goes to show, like, when you work on set, you just be nice and kind and pleasant to everybody because you don't know when you might need them or when they might be of like real help to you. So that was nice.
Do you have any of your kit with you that like maybe things that are your go-to that you just can't live without that you can share with us?
I do. I brought you asked me, so I did bring a couple of things.
Bring it out.
Okay.
You can grab it and then we'll sit back down.
Okay, perfect.
All right, so we're back with
yes.
What's in your bag? Your top items.
Okay, so I could have brought my entire kit because I love so much about everything I have, but everybody, blow dryer, curling irons, everybody has that. But I think for me, one of my favorite tools that I constantly use is my brush. It's a Mason Pearson brush. These are handmade in England, and they're, I think, one of the oldest like brush companies, but they're made out of boar bristle and synthetic fibers, but they're so good. You can detangle, you can blow dry with them. If I've done like a set of, like a curling iron set, like you just get such a beautiful brush out with this. And you can tease, you can like expand hair, like you can just do so much. And like I will never, ever, ever not have a Mason Pearson with me. I have it for my personal use at home. And whenever someone asks for what's a good brush, I'm always like, get you a Mason Pearson. So this is really good too for, the boar bristles, like get to absorb a little bit of the natural oil that you have in your hair. So when you brush your hair, like the bristles are like spreading that oil down through your hair. So it's got like a lot of benefits too, to just maybe like brushing your hair at night. This is, not for girls that have really, really curly hair, because that would be an absolute disaster. But like, if you have my texture hair, like a soft wave, like this is a great brush to brush your hair at night. But I have actually, I did a shoot with this brand called Selkie where the client wanted the talent, the model that we had, who was like just stunning, and she had just a naturally big, like froey hair, and she wanted it really, really expanded. So I actually brushed it with this Mason Pearson, but made sure that I put a lot of conditioning products. And I feel like I should show a picture of you, but the hair just expanded, and it was this like giant, beautiful, fluffy hair that I don't think I could have gotten if it wasn't for Mason Pearson. So this is like one of my go-to products, brushes. And then I have a product that I always keep in my kit, and it's the Virtue Volumizing Primer. It's really, really good to spray at the base of the hair to get some volume. You know, when you're shooting on set, you always need volume, because if you have no volume at the root, once the talent gets on camera, it looks very, very flat. You know, it's like the camera adds 10 pounds kind of a thing. Well, the camera also like completely flattens hair. So you always need a little bit of volume to kind of, so I love the Virtue. And then I've been really, really excited about this new product. It's from K18 and it's called Air Wash. It's basically it is a dry shampoo, but it's unlike any dry shampoo that's on the market out there. It sprays kind of wet and dries, and it leaves like no residue. I was fortunate enough to work with them on the launch of this product, so that's pretty cool. But I'm not plugging them because I work with them. Like, I actually really, really love this product. Like, it gives volume, and it's just a really interesting concept, and it's just a really interesting, I would say it's less concept and more scientific kind of innovation. Mm-hmm. So always have that on my kit now. But my most favorite item,
your secret weapon
on my kit, that for hair people is not a surprise, but if you don't do hair on set, you're like, what? A leaf blower.
Nice.
So this is a leaf blower, but I constantly use this on set. When you see images of like flowy hair kind of being expanded from, wind, or as though like just this soft gust of wind came in, it's usually me like
nice.
Kind of doing this. So this is my absolute favorite product. I have like a love and hate relationship with it because it's heavy. It's got a little bit of weight, but if you're on set for 10 to 12 hours, you're like constantly,
Do you ever have to bring a second battery, or does that's good for a day?
These are pretty good, but like the first thing I do on set when I know I'm going to, because some photographers prefer it, some photographers don't. Some people that are like very, very old school prefer like wafting boards, and that absolutely gives you a completely different effect, and it probably is really more beautiful. But this is just much easier than like trying to waft, because that also takes space. Sometimes when I'm shooting with a photographer, like the space between where the photographer and the boards and whatever they have is like really quite small. So like this is the best that I can do. But yeah, I think this would be a surprise for people that don't work on set.
I love it.
That they're like, there's a leaf blower that, because you're in a studio, there's like no natural wind. So sometimes I love having it and sometimes I hate it, because it's just like I'll go home and my upper arm is just so sore because I'm constantly like,
you're doing a workout.
Holding it. Yeah. So, yeah.
Who does your hair?
Me.
Okay. Have you ever trusted anyone else?
I cut and color my own hair, which is
why do you
quite
do that?
Wild. I mean, I have not been to a salon in like over 10 years. I do it because I'm at home and I have the product, and I'm just like, might as well just do it.
You know exactly how you want it.
Yeah, I mean, I also do my own highlights, which is really difficult. But I had my husband install like a mirror, sort of behind the mirror that we have in the bathroom. So I'm constantly like checking the other mirror to do my highlights, which is absolutely wild. Do not recommend.
Yeah.
I'm like halfway through doing my foils, like, why am I doing this? Like, and I've had friends that are like, let me do your hair, I don't know. I think I like love doing it. And if it's really if it like doesn't turn out great, like I know how to fix it. But I'm also it's really interesting that I do hair for a living and I see the impact that like doing hair has on people. But I'm like, it's just hair. Like it'll grow. If I give myself like not so great of a cut, which has never happened because I give myself pretty great cuts. But if I don't like it, it's like, whatever, it'll grow. It's just hair. And if I don't like the color, like whatever, it'll grow. Like that's my thing. Like, it'll grow because it's but I've always been like that all my life. I just remember like I would be driving home from school and I would see like a salon and be like, okay, I'm getting my hair cut. And I'd walk out with like a bowl cut, and just look ridiculous. I'm like, well, I did it to myself, but it'll grow. It's just hair. So, but I have had a couple of people cut my hair. The only person that like has like when I haven't cut it has been one of my mentors who like does dry cutting and is like a master at it. And then when I was on Top Chef, one of the hairstylists for one of the leads, he and I became really great friends and shared the same mentor. And I think that's what kind of really bonded us together. And he was the one that cut my hair. I sometimes will just take scissors because I'm at home bored and during COVID, I had really long hair and I decided to give myself a bob. And I went and the sound of the scissors and the hair is so cool. I cut your hair.
You used to cut.
I used to.
But because it's funny.
You left.
But you can't.
You went to
You can't
someone
be
else.
mad at me. I started doing what you do.
You cut your own hair.
I'm not kidding you. I just cut my own hair. I would go to number 3 and I was like, I get like an extra week or 2 if I just go to a 2. So now it's just a 2, buzz it, and then around the ears a little bit. No,
now
I'm
I can't
sure
make a living because you cut your own hair. Which kind of brings it back. The reason I don't go get my hair cut and colored somewhere else is because it's so expensive. Like $400 to highlight my hair and cut my hair. And sometimes some salons let you walk out with wet hair. That's wild to me.
That's a bad practice.
I don't want to sit here and talk negatively about how people conduct their business in a salon, right? But like I hear from a lot of people that get their hair done. And listen, I think coloring hair is hard and it's laborious. So is cutting it and blow drying it. Like our job is very difficult on the body, and we're constantly working with chemicals and with products. Like it's not an easy job. So I think people should charge whatever their rate is, and people should pay it. And me personally, I think that if you have a client, I'm gonna get canceled. If you're doing a color and that person's come in, had the service, but has to pay an additional $65 or whatever it is for a blowout, I feel like that's kind of unfair. Maybe you don't have to do a beautiful round brush blowout, but you can at least dry their hair. Like, how do you see that the color's great if you don't blow dry the hair? Like, it used to be that you got your hair done and a blowout was part of the process. So include that cost instead of making people pay an additional $65 to dry their hair. Just include it in the service, and then people don't feel like they're being nickeled and dimed. Like my sister-in-law, the salon she goes at, she pays a lot of money and then she pays for a blowout on top of it. And sometimes she's walked out without a blowout because it's gotten so expensive to do the color. And I'm always like, how do they know your color's taken if it's wet? Like, you need to dry the hair. So I don't think that's right.
Does it change maybe in hue to a lighter or darker?
Always. When hair is wet, always it reads darker. So you need to see how the color came out. Colorists, people that do this for a living, are pretty great. They know exactly what it looks like wet, but the client doesn't. And I just don't think someone should... Like, before I started doing hair, I used to love walking out of the salon with my hair done. I felt so great. If you loved your style, you feel so good and like you want to be seen. And I just don't understand why some salons don't have that practice. Like, you're walking out with wet hair? That's crazy.
You can leave your client feeling better when they leave.
Why would you not want your client to walk out beaming?
Yeah, they just may
with
want
a
it to
service
seem like
that they've just
a lower
done.
price, and then if you add it,
Included in the price.
When you're considering doing hair, how wildly different is it if you're doing it in a salon to like freelance?
Yeah, I mean, I have like a little studio where I take my own like haircut clients, and I don't do color because I don't have a shampoo bowl, and and color is like a whole nother layer that requires a lot of education and practice, and that is pretty high risk. Like a haircut, it'll eventually grow. I mean, I guess the color you can fix it too, but it's just a different experience. Like on set, I'm cutting hair on set. Sometimes like maybe a little bang trim, or like some client is like, hey, the model's coming in and we're going to give her a haircut because we want it to be shorter. And that has to be agreed upon with the agent for the model. Like you can't really just be cutting everybody's hair on set. You have to like, the model may want a haircut, but her agent doesn't. And so she's not getting a haircut, or he's not getting a haircut, And, the client has to like write off everything. You can't just, do the things. But I do cuts on set sometimes, but I don't color on set. I've worked on campaigns that like are color campaigns, but that's like they make, allowances for that. But generally, you're never really coloring somebody's hair on set. You're maybe giving them a trim.
Got it.
So it's like a completely different experience. Like my job is styling hair, really. It's not like altering the color of somebody's hair. It's just styling it on set.
Is there anything that you want to say that I probably didn't touch up on?
I think it'd be fun to talk about how we met, actually, because we mentioned it. Yeah.
And we know each other because we have a friendship of 8 years. So
because we started working together. Yeah.
So like I've seen you succeed. That's the reason you're on here. So
you have. Because when we first met, September 2016, I was coming to audition for Systems LA, the clothing brand, and
I
it
think
was
that was a job probably from Model Mayhem.
It was definitely from Model Mayhem. I saw it. In fact, I think you guys are the person that was like doing that ad. I think reached out, but I think they were just doing like a blanket, email for everybody, and I was so excited, and she mentioned that like you guys would shoot consistently, and I was so new, and I was like reaching out to agencies daily, no response, or sometimes someone would respond and be like, oh, we don't have an assistant roster, and I was like, okay, yes, but you wrote me back. And so then I would write that person back like, hey, I know you don't have an assistant roster, but if you know of someone, let me know. Like, the no was like a maybe for me. And then when I heard that you guys were shooting and we're building your own sort of team of hair and makeup, and that you would shoot consistently, it was like, oh my God, I need this. This is what I need, because I wasn't really working. Like, I wasn't working in the industry. I was working like on the industry, which meant that I was sending emails every day, and trying to or like reaching out to people on Instagram and trying to assist and trying to get started. And so when I came in, I was very nervous. I remember like I dressed like really professionally.
You came in with like,
I was dressed in a
business suit. I do feel like I remember that, yeah, which is not bad.
I didn't have a business suit, but the first time I ever showed up on a set assisting, I was like, I had like a little kitten heel, and like I looked like I was going to the office, and the person that I was assisting had like this crazy wild pink hair, and she was just very like relaxed, because that's one thing about people behind the scenes, like sometimes they look so comfortable that you wonder like, how are you in fashion, but you're there to work. You're not there to like show an outfit off or anything. But I chuckle at that sometimes, because I think, I wonder what she thought when she saw me walk in. She probably was like, who the hell, like, what is this lady? But I had no idea what it was like to be on set. I just knew that I had to be like professional. And so I dressed what I thought was professional, which was like black slacks. And I think I had like a black top with like a kitten heel. And it was like it was an Anastasia of Beverly Hills shoot. I remember that. So same, like dressed pretty professionally. Then I learned like maybe you should not be wearing heels on set and an assistant. You should be wearing like tennis shoes and be comfortable, but I had no one to tell me that, because that information wasn't like available at the time.
Well, I was going to ask you, when you were studying in New York, did you get any of a taste? Because you said you kind of saw what it's like.
Yeah. So my school, we had a teacher that took us to do, like, when New York Fashion Week was happening, they took us to do hair for Fashion Week, but it was for like C-list brands. Like, it wasn't actually Fashion Week. It was like maybe students, or I don't even know what kind of brands they were, but we definitely weren't at Fashion Week. But it was very much, having done Fashion Week now, it's very much kind of the same setup. And you go in, we didn't get paid for it, and then you sort of do the hair like someone tells you, and you see the models. And it was the first time I'd ever experienced something like that, and I just fell in love with it. Like, it was just so cool. But again, it's something that I think we did because we were in New York. Like, I don't know if that happens in other cities, and that's when I learned, like, oh, there's this really interesting world outside of, like, I just thought, like, you graduate and you go to work in a salon. But then I remember reading an article from a hairstylist. His name is Kevin Murphy. He's like a huge hairstylist. He's like a really big brand, like hair products. And he had written, or he was being interviewed for a magazine, and he'd written about being a session stylist. And that's the first time I even heard the word session stylist. And, I still have that article because it was like career defining for me. Because that's when I was like, oh, I want to do that. Like, I want to work on set. Like, I don't want to work in a salon. I want to do this. And then when we moved to LA, my now husband and I moved to LA, I was like, okay, I'm doing this, and I'm only going to focus on building this career. And so, I didn't know anybody. I didn't have anybody. So now whenever I meet people that are like, I want to do what you're doing, I'm full of resources and full of information. Hey, this is how I did it. And I feel like I try to share contacts and try to share information as much as possible, because it was hard for me, but I also don't want to make it too easy on people. Not because I worked, it was hard for me, so everybody has to struggle. But I think that, I want to tell you how you can get there, and these are the things that you need to do, and here's some agencies to reach out to, but like, you have to do reaching out. And I've shared to people like, hey, here's the kind of email you should write, but I'm not going to write it for you. Like, you have to do the work, because then you're going to appreciate the fruits of the labor much more than if I like held your hand. I mean, I do. Sometimes people are like, do you recommend someone? And I'm always sort of, I'm always recommending people.
Mm-hmm. Last question, a little personal.
I'm a Scorpio, thank you. That's a very LA thing, right? Everyone's like, what's your sign?
I don't know, maybe a lot of people. I was going to ask you, what are like hardships that your career has brought? You kind of talked about sacrifices with regards to being in a relationship. Like, what are things to be mindful of that you should tell your partner, or if you're in this industry, what they can expect?
Yeah, I mean, very long hours. Sometimes I've been on set for like 17 hours, and I just want to go home. I don't even care about the overtime. Like, I want to go home and I want to sleep, because I'm exhausted, because I've been on my feet, or I've been working for 17 hours. So it's just really long hours. So you have to be able, like, I just don't know how the women that I've worked with that have children do it. Like, that's a big sacrifice, because sometimes they're not there when their children are waking up, and they're not there to put their kids to bed, So my hat's off to like all the parents that are in this industry, not just moms, dads too, because there's a lot of sacrifices there. You don't get to really be a part of that because you're out earning a living, because if you don't take that job, you're not making money for your family, So I think that is a really big sacrifice. Quality time with your family, and sometimes if you're booked for a job and there's like an event, or like there's a birthday, or there's something, sometimes you get to miss those things because you're confirmed on a job, I think that the other thing is, so much of our job is on social media, And so you have to find a good balance of like being on social media enough to promote your work, but not so much that you are consumed by it and you're not present in your in your life with your family. And I think for me in the beginning that was a problem. I was constantly on Instagram, even when I wasn't. Like, I would be sitting next to my husband at home and I was like on Instagram, because there's also so much information and you can learn so much. And I think like it was pointed out to me that I was on Instagram a lot. And so I'm like, there's a balance for that with me too. I try to like, I mean, that's also a problem for me. I don't promote myself as much as I should, and I really need to get better about it. But you have to like promote yourself, but also have time for your family and friends where you're not focusing on self-promotion, which is what you need to do to keep getting work, you know?
Mm-hmm. Got it. Yeah.
I don't know if that applied to
No, that's good advice.
Get off social media,
find
everybody.
the balance.
Find a
don't
balance.
get off. No, you got to find the balance. Yeah.
No, definitely find a balance. Don't do what I'm doing.
Well, in closing, is there anything that you want to say that I might have missed or not touched up on?
I mean, honestly, thank you for having me. This has been like really fun, and you know, it's nice to talk about how I got here, and I'm always fascinated with how people got to where their places in careers. So it's just really fun to like now be on the other side of it, and I get to share my story. And you know, I think if there's some information to be taken out of this, like if you're out there and you want to change your career and you want to do what I'm doing and you're sitting in an office somewhere, like just do it. I think that's what's great about this country, is that you can really start from scratch. But I think about this industry that you don't have to be a specific age. I mean, I started at 35 and 34.
So you can start very young.
So you can start very young out of beauty school, or you can really start it at any point. You just have to know that you have to start from the bottom, and you have to put your ego aside, and you have to just work,
Mm-hmm.
And that success is there to be had depending on how much you're willing to put into it. So jump.
There you have it. Jump. Thank you so
you.
much. I really appreciate all of your wisdom and information you've shared with us today, and hopefully we'll have a chance to speak again in the future.
I love that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll catch you in the next episode.